Absolute Superman issue 1, Jason Aaron writing with Rafa Sandoval on the art. This is the third of our Absolute line coming out. We had Batman first, we got Wonder Woman second, and now we've had Superman.
Yep.
And this was the first one announced. I mean, unless they'd announced multiples at the same time, but I feel like this is the first one we knew about.
Oh no, I feel like it was Batman. They led with Snyder coming back,
Maybe you're right.
I think.
I
And
don't
then
know.
we heard about this one and then Wonder Woman.
Yeah, you may be right, but for whatever reason, I felt like this was the one that was sticking in my brain.
Yeah.
Is like,
I, yeah, I feel like Superman and Wonder Woman got announced at around the same time, and we were, both excited for their creative teams. So.
yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean this book's interesting, as all the
Mhm.
Absolute books have been, and how it reshapes the origin. It's kind of
Mhm.
like half the book takes place on Krypton before its destruction.
Mhm.
And it's not just the opening, because obviously there's an extended opening on Krypton,
Mhm.
but it even goes back to it by the end, and it seems like that at least through the first arc, I suspect that we're going to keep getting more of the story of
Mhm.
what happened in those last days of Krypton.
Which I do like because I feel like we get the single shot from All Star Superman, right? The dying planet, the rocket ship, and that, and then we just jump to Superman. So it seems like Aaron is wanting to show the destruction of Krypton from, from the political and people standpoint, not just the destruction of the planet. Because it does not seem like this. Like, yes, it looks technologically advanced and beautiful, but it is rotting from within in more ways than one.
Yeah, but I think more to the point though is that how different it is to normal. Like
Hmm.
not drastically so, but it feels like everything's turned up to 11. So
Hmm.
if we normally think of, oh, Krypton died because they were too arrogant about what they were doing to their planet, this is
Hmm.
taking that and running with it, where we've got
Yeah.
almost like a Gattaca style class system on
Hmm.
Krypton, where not that it's about genetics necessarily, but the idea that the Sun people are the ones that are running the league, which is controlling the planet. They're all scientists. It's all about progress.
Hmm.
And then anyone who's been deemed unsuitable for that, and we find out how both Lara and Jor-El, both as
Hmm.
children at various ages, basically got themselves disqualified from the good life and now have to
Hmm.
work in servitude for the rest of their lives.
Yep.
Um, they are the lower class. They are not allowed to have the same privileges.
Hmm.
And we also find out, at least in this absolute universe, that the House of El symbol seems to be something that all the lower class wear. It's not a family
Yep.
symbol. It's
Yeah, it's like the service class, right?
yeah.
And so, Lara works as a mechanic, and like we get this very like bleak kind of dystopia where you have to pay for the rain. So you have these farmers out in the outskirts of the mega cities of Krypton that if they don't pay their rain bill, they just don't get to grow crops, you know? And so she's helping, build this tractor for this guy, and he mentions that she's like the best mechanic he's ever met. And then you find out that Jor-El was, he wanted to be part of that big science class, right? But he questioned too many things and he ended up being an engineer. So he's very gifted at what he does, but he's still on the working end of things. He's not in that leadership science council that we come to expect with him.
It's something you lost over there that's probably worth mentioning is that
Hmm.
they literally create the rain. Like they control
Hmm.
like clouds with technology, which is why they're
Hmm.
charging for it.
Yeah.
It's not just that there's a random bill whenever the clouds decide to have a bit of
Yeah.
rain. Like they're literally
They
have
make it happen.
they've taken control of the ecosystem. They've taken
Hmm.
control of everything.
Yep.
They're mining aggressively. Like there's giant skyscraper-sized superconductors in the cities that are
Hmm.
just for producing energy. Like
Hmm.
they've turned the entire planet into this big battery for the technology they
Hmm.
use, and they also have a tight control over how their technology is used, what they're doing. You mentioned Jor-El. It was his
Hmm.
graduation speech in high school, if they even called it that, but the
Yeah.
equivalent, where he basically criticized how some of the technology has been used, and what
Hmm.
they're doing to the planet, and that got him blacklisted from ever joining the league.
Hmm.
Lara, on the other hand, was blacklisted at age 9 because she wrote an essay. Even though she was a gifted child, she
Yep.
had a bright future ahead of her. But because she criticized the rules against intergalactic travel, or whatever the rules are for intergalactic
Hmm.
travel, because they don't really get too specific with it here,
Yeah.
that blacklisted her. So yeah, it's this idea that like she is very talented and potentially would have been like a NASA engineer if she'd kept
Yeah.
going in the path she wanted to be on, and Jor-El would be like leading the world of science in other ways, but instead he's like checking mines for safety issues and things like that, and she's fixing tractors.
Yeah, they call him an engineer, and you know he's kind of like the work site foreman, where he's responsible for all the workers, but he's kind of still middle management. And you know, the scene that we see that in.
No, he's not. Because they literally give you a class here that's called middle management that has a different symbol on the chest. So
that's true.
He is not. He's actually stepping out of line by making decisions, which then middle management challenge him on and say, get back to work. There's no evidence that this mine's unsafe. And Jor-El says, no, it's unsafe. Like, I'm fighting you on it. So it definitely shows us a Jor-El who's willing to stand up for what he thinks is right.
Yes.
And notably in the art, Jor-El in this book looks a lot more like Superman than Superman does. At least for now. I'm sure maybe Superman will get a haircut later on and he'll look more like...
But again, that can't be an accident by Sandoval.
No, not at all.
But he's drawing the similarities between them. But I also, the thing with Lara in the space too is like in traditional mythos, you know, she was an astronaut before she became Jor-El's wife, you know, and had the baby and stuff. So the fact that she was so interested in space travel, I like that they're keeping some of that stuff here. So again, like in the Batman book and the Wonder Woman book, they're still vaguely familiar, but there's these other things, like you said, that are turned up to 11 that make it different.
Yeah. I mean, even like when Lara's talking to the farmer, who at first I actually thought was Jor-El, or maybe even like Jor-El's dad, maybe.
That's what I thought too,
because he was much older.
Is he wearing a House of El?
He is, yeah. That's why I thought that, but we learn after that everyone in the working class wears this symbol. This is not a family symbol in this universe, which is fine. But when they're talking about the weather and they're complaining that he's paid his rain bill and it's up to 3,000 whatever a month, you know, they criticize and say, I bet Kandor got its rain on time today. So they're critiquing the rich areas for getting their rain, and it's us poor parts of the planet that are always waiting, that are always getting things late. So, I mean, credit to Jason Aaron here, because he builds such a fully realized world in this opening, you know, 15 pages or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Which, you know, and it takes time. You know, we start off with Lara and this farmer. We eventually get to Jor-El in the mines and like arguing about whether or not it's safe. And of course, there's tremors, which he obviously is going to link to the fact that the planet's going to be dying soon, because that's just, you know, typical Krypton story. But all of this is super interesting. And of course, you're thinking during this, okay, how long is this before the end of the planet, though? Because in this first portion of the book, there is no indication that there is a Kal-El. There's no indication that they have a son. They don't mention it at all in the first part. It's actually a reveal when we come back to this part of the story, towards the end of the book, that they do have a son. Jor-El's got this look of fear in his eyes that, oh, hey, the planet's dying. Like, our days are numbered here. And then they say, where's Kal? And we're expecting to see a baby. And instead we see a 10-year-old?
Like a preteen,
Yeah, 10, 11, something in that range. So this, kind of like traditional Supergirl, this is a Clark Kent, a Superman, who is going to remember Krypton, because he's narrating the book and he's talking about his parents, and then we get the full context by the end that he's describing them, not just based on what he's learned in A Fortress of Solitude, if he even has such a thing. He's describing them in the way that he remembers them.
Yeah, he knows Jor-El, he knows Lara. You know, it's not, you know, the memories or these, you know, what the Fortress has told them about them. So and I'm sure that'll impact his decisions going forward, right? Yeah.
Like I said, I got a lot of Gattaca vibes when he was describing the social structure of this Krypton. That page where it's like the sun wearers like having like lunch or whatever, and you see like the again, I'll call them the House of El service staff. They're not actually part of the family, but just for lack of a better term, to like. And I'm like, oh yeah, this makes me think of Gattaca. I'm basically seeing Ethan Hawke right now, cleaning the place when all the astronauts are, you know, the ones that are actually getting to do all the important stuff.
The stuff, yeah. Well, and there's always been like that kind of structure to stories about Krypton, right? But because Krypton's a dead planet, we never really see them in in action. So here, Aaron really drives it home by making it seem, like you said, like Gattaca, these other familiar kind of caste systems that exist. So it makes it seem like, when we see Superman on our Earth and what that represents and what he does, it drives that home even more.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, all that stuff's super interesting. It really paints a very different Krypton for what we're used to. And then things really sort of spice up when we get to the present day part of the story. We go to Brazil, and now we basically get this story about this evil company, Lazarus, they're called, and they have been. I mean, just to sum up what they do typically, right? Although Superman explains this has just happened, is that they've got people mining, not unlike Krypton, being forced to mine.
There are parallels.
There absolutely are. But they're mining for diamonds. So they basically released a pocket of asbestos, right? And it started snowing asbestos out into the village where all their families live, and they're forced to keep digging. And so, it really presents this idea of like a Superman before he's quite become Superman, going around and just seeking out particular injustice. But notably, he seems to be targeting this because it's a running thing that this company's been doing all over the planet. Perhaps because, as we learn, he remembers what his parents used to do. Maybe he specifically feels he feels particularly upset by this going on versus everything else that's also probably happening. So the story here is that Superman, for the next day, has snuck into the mines and mined it all himself and crushed all of the rocks into their diamonds, so that the workers don't have to dig anymore. But this just like makes the peacekeepers, we find out, or like the guards, the enforcers here, they're all dressed like peacekeeper. They like
peacemakers.
Sorry, yeah, peacemakers. They start like beating up some of the workers and like, demanding to know how this happened, and they even mention, oh, this is just like something that happened in whatever other country, like there's something going on here, there's something weird. And they start teasing Superman. We sort of see him in a hood the night before talking to one of the workers, and we see his X-ray vision getting used, but it's kind of kept an arm's distance, right? We don't really get a full reveal of him. It's not until the Peacemaker is about to kill, or is at least threatening to torture this worker, that we start getting really weird with it, because seemingly Superman, his suit has an AI in it, which is the best way I can describe it right now. Maybe there's more to it than that. But he's regenerating his solar energy, which maybe is something he has to do specifically in the Absolute Universe.
Because they said that he, doing the stuff that he did the night before, expelled a lot of that energy. But it almost looks like he's sleeping in like one of those charging pads that you can drop your phone onto.
I was thinking it looks more like Neo in the Matrix when he wakes up from the...
Yeah.
Because he's got a lot of red tubes get into him.
Yeah, kind of.
I don't know. Anyway, so there's like a military force coming to the town to deal with the fact that, there's something fishy going on here. But Superman wakes up, even though the AI voice keeps telling him not to. This is a bad idea. It seems like the AI voice, which is probably what do you call him?
Helix?
No, not Helix. Eradicator? Is that the word I'm looking for?
Oh yeah. Maybe I can see that.
The reason why I'm saying that is because he says that, my purpose is to like maintain you because you're the last of Krypton. So he keeps trying to tell him to not do anything because you should be staying hidden. You should be a secret. So I'm thinking that maybe this is this universe's version of Eradicator.
That makes sense. I was thinking along the lines of Helix or like even Skeets, like with Booster. That's there to kind of remind him to dial it back. But no, Eradicator makes a lot more sense in that sense.
Yeah, that was my first thought anyway. But Superman, comes out, he fights all these guys, we finally get a full page spread. He is wearing the symbol, there's no cape, at least for now. But he does take on the soldiers, so we get some action sequences and whatever else. So, yeah. But during all this, it cuts to another military force coming from Lazarus who aren't peacemakers. It's just like a SWAT team. But this is the field team for Phenomena. So this is actually a team that's sent in to deal with strange beings or like I'm kind of getting the impression that this team, are supposed to like bring in stuff like this, right? The peacemakers are just there to do normal security work. This is more.
Well,
like,
yeah, they're the brute force. These guys are the ones. This is the science police kind of deal.
Yeah.
You know.
So yeah, and there's notably a woman here who sort of deduces a bunch of stuff based on the blurry photographs that they've got of Superman. And I'm only mentioning her because she's going to be important in a few pages' time.
Yeah, what gave it to me was something about her physical features.
So yeah. Anyway, like the whole big thing is these troops show up. Superman's getting ready to be defiant, but a big metal like handcuff like slaps on his wrist, and it's Agent Lane, the woman there with much shorter hair is Agent Lane, and they seem to have apprehended Superman, and this is where we get the title page actually. They save it for quite late in the book. So and this arc is called The Last Dust of Krypton, which is a very depressing version of that old saying. So yeah, I mean, I think this was a big moment to go to the title page on. I do think it's interesting having a Lois who is not a reporter, because if I'm going to assume, and I think it's a fair assumption to make, that she's still going to inevitably fall for Superman, then having her fall for him when she's technically supposed to be his prison guard or something akin to that is certainly a different dynamic to play with. So
yeah. It's when they showed her and she has the dark hair, but it's really cut short. But her eyes are so kind of purpley, and I was like, this must be Lois.
Of course, you got it from her eye color.
Come on now,
you nerd. You're such a nerd.
Yeah, I am. And then she also is the first person to call him Superman in this book, right? And I don't know if this is something they've been calling him as they're trying to chase him down, but she's the first person in this to call him that.
And I think it's
interesting.
Yeah, it's when she's arrested him, she says, move and I fry your face, Superman. And Superman's in air quotes. So you can tell she's sort of saying it in kind of like a, not a demeaning way, but like, like they don't really know what to call him yet. Like, but he's been doing all this absurd stuff. Like one of the things they were saying when they were looking at the readings, like, his power levels are off the charts. This is insane, like how strong he is, how fast he is, or whatever.
And the thing I like about it too is when you look at it, like he has this armor that's kind of around him, but it heats up almost like I don't know how to say it, like his extremities start to heat up, so his hands and feet, and it's almost like those are where the solar charge is being emanated from. It's a really cool look. So when she slaps the cuffs on the wrist, it's a big image.
Yeah, he also does that sort of solar blast thing that he's had in recent years, where he kind of does an uncontrollable heat vision explosion, which takes out all the guards. That's right before he gets arrested. But it's super interesting status quo. And then it seems like I don't know if it's the person running Lazarus, but it certainly makes me think of Brainiac, this one page of someone who's green and there's like these 3 purple lights pointing down at him.
Yeah, out in the Nevada desert, it says it's the Lazarus Core R&D department.
Yes.
But there's also bottled things that are screaming in this monitor room. So yeah, very, very Brainiac-esque.
Yeah, the bottled. It's funny though, because those bottled cities or whatever they might technically end up being here, they'll almost look like bonsai trees just in a jar,
or like molds of stuff. Like they look like bacteria colonies or stuff. But the one where it says "kill us, please kill us" actually looks like a city, kind of. But yeah, just definitely, and there's a lot of purples and greens and all that other stuff. So it definitely seems like someone that's using the Brainiac motif is working for Lazarus.
I mean, that's probably Brainiac sitting right there, I'd assume. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. It says a scrumptious new toy. Wonder where you came from. So maybe he's going to become obsessed with finding something Kryptonian based on Superman. And we just get a quick shot of the Kent farm. It says property of Lazarus. It's run down. Clearly, no one's living there right now. So, did he live with the Kents? I mean, we don't know.
It looks like something crashed through their roof.
Oh, yeah, maybe he killed them by landing inside the house.
Yeah.
That would be the dark twist to this. So yeah, then we get the Krypton stuff that I mentioned earlier, where Jor-El comes back, and we get the reveal that young Clark is actually like, a proper kid
Yeah.
here. So
With Krypton, no less. You know, right next to
yes,
him.
I doubt he's called that though, right?
No, but still, it's
Yeah.
definitely the imagery that's there. I mean, and I just wanted to point out too that it's funny that in Absolute Batman he has a mom, and as of right now, Superman has no parents. So it's almost like they've kind of swapped some things, you know.
Yeah,
Or
kinda. Yeah, and
it's like,
in a
yeah,
weird way as well, they've kind of swapped like now like Jor-El and Lara. Well, Lara anyway seems to be working on farms, which is something we
yeah,
typically think of the Kents as doing.
right,
So
right.
there's
So
some real switcheroos going on.
yeah, and we get some a bit of ominous stuff in the final panel of it looks like that green stuff that was coming out of the mines is starting to sprout up around the
The
L's farm.
Yeah, the ground. Yeah. Um. Yeah. So I mean, did you like this, Matt?
Oh, I loved it. It's Jason Aaron, doing a populist kind of Superman, which kind of returns the character to his original roots back from in the 30s, and so the fact that he shows up and it's, not just to help the miners, but keep them out of the mines as they're being exploited, right? Because he's not like trying to just close down the mine. He's just trying to make their jobs easier so they're not exposed to as much asbestos, because like that snow, because the damage has already been done, right? So this is a Superman that's going around and doing things in his own way, to help the people and not just, as that superhero in Metropolis. It's one of the things I love about Mark Waid's Birthright so much is a big chunk of the beginning of that is Superman going around the world as Clark, right, and helping people in need.
Yeah, that feels like that's the phase he's in right now in this universe to me. Yeah, I know he's already wearing the S and whatnot, but it feels like that's the phase he's in right now, is the going around and helping people before he becomes the public hero known as Superman.
And like when the kind of the mining leader tries to talk to him, he goes, "What's your name?" He goes, "I don't have a name anymore." Right? So he's doing everything in secret. He's not doing things to, he just wants a better life for people that I'm sure that he relates to, right? Like, because if this is familiar to what he remembers of Krypton, then he wants to at least try to save this planet from that happening,
I wonder if he actually has any natural powers, or he needs the suit like taking in the energy to actually use them. Like, does he have any natural power? Like the X-ray vision would imply yes, but maybe the suit's still a part of that too. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe the suit helps channel it, right? And that's why, because when he has the big like supernova explosion, he's telling the suit or soul, the AI, he's like, "All right, that's enough. I'm overloaded." So it's almost like it helps him, focus that energy, and which would make sense because if he's like a living solar battery, and he's not quite in control yet, that would make sense.
But I'm wondering, does he even take in solar energy? Is this just something that his father designed for him so that he'd have an upper hand? Maybe physically he doesn't have any advantages. I mean, maybe he does, but like, I'm just because anything could be different here, and because his suit was glowing in this way, where the suit seemed to be the one taking in the energy.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And we haven't seen him fly. We haven't seen him do the super speed. It's mainly like physical strength and vulnerability, and then like energy projection type stuff.
And the
which is a bit different. Oh, and the X-ray vision, but I would throw that under the the energy kind of vibe. So maybe you're right. Maybe the suit and that charging thing like that brings in the solar energy and then transfers it to him. And if that's the case, what happens if that gets into the hands of, the bad guys, which is something that we don't usually have to worry about with Superman, right? So, that would definitely be different.
Yeah. I mean, I could be completely wrong here. I'm just sort of spitballing based on, what we're seeing in this first issue. I suspect we will see him fly at some point. I mean, they might save it till like issue 6 or something like that, but I think they'll
make a big moment out of it because, I mean, he does have the cape on the cover, and that is classic iconography of Superman. So yeah, I definitely think he'll fly. It'll just be this big, huge moment, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I liked it a lot as well. I think it really did a good job of building the world. If anything, I like the Krypton stuff even more than the Earth stuff. The Earth stuff's pretty solid.
Yeah.
Like I think it's he's got kind of this harsher attitude, but not in this like. This isn't like Superman Earth 1 where I feel like, oh, you're just missing the point. This definitely feels like you're building a very different world's version of Superman. The Krypton stuff feels very fleshed out to me. It seems I'm actually genuinely fascinated to see how this progresses to the end of that story, the end of Krypton, which I imagine we'll get to by the end of the first arc of the book via these flashbacks.
And having Clark there and experiencing that kind of does raise the stakes for how he's going to react here on Earth, which I do like. That's a little storytelling thing that
I think that makes sense that he's a little bit colder and a little bit more cynical because he had to actually experience the death and the ignorance that led to it.
Yeah.
You know?
It's not hope, but it's not despair, right? Which makes sense in this world, right? Where it's kind of been molded by Darkseid. Because he still wants to help, but it's not like you said, he's very cold and just very methodical, and he's doing this just to help because he feels it's
more
right.
like Batman, is what you're saying.
I guess so, right? and so but yeah, he's not this bright, shiny, smiling guy that we're used to seeing. Like in any kind of Superman story, when he makes his kind of first appearance, it's this big, huge, bright, Yeah,
but honestly, the more I think about it, the more it is like Batman. Like he saw like what happened to his parents, what the powers that be on Krypton did to his parents, and he specifically steps in this issue to stop that from happening to other people on Earth because he doesn't want to see it happen again. I mean, that's kind of what Batman's whole shtick is for the most part. Is, this happened to my parents, I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. So
of course,
obviously, I'm sure it'll progress beyond that, but I mean, it's very compelling so far. The art's really strong. I think it. Sandoval's a very he's kind of like the upper tier of house style, where it's house style, but it's a very high quality house style that's always very pleasing to look at, always very expressive, always makes big moments out of the splash pages and what have you, and it makes you wait. Like, you see the S quite early because all the half the characters on Krypton are wearing it, but like it makes a big deal out of that first time you see it on Superman. Like when you see him actually standing up against the Peacemakers.
Big full page, he's dead center, and people are behind him, right? So he's creating it's an actual S shield at that point.
Yeah, I do wonder as well, like, does he progress to something that's a bit more recognizable as Superman in terms of personality, or is the point that he'll never quite become that because the world that he's in? I genuinely don't know. I could see it going either way, but be very curious to see how it progresses. Especially, I mean, obviously what they've set up for issue 2 is like, how is the early part of the Superman and Lois Lane story going to play out when they're at this very, very different starting point with each other?
I mean, yeah, because Lois has never been on the opposite side of him, right? Like, even as a reporter, she was reporting what he was doing. She wasn't trying to stop him from what he was doing. So
Matt, I feel like saying ever when we're talking about comic books is a stupid thing to say. Like, I guarantee you there's an issue somewhere.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. In the grand scheme of things.
I do know what you mean, but I'm just like, there'll be an anal commenter who'll be like, Adventure Comics number 182.
And to that I say, I love your encyclopedic knowledge, but that's not part of this lore, so we're fine. All right? Reset, rebirth, all that other stuff, right? The monitor says no. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
But,
when was the last time the word Lazarus was getting thrown around a lot? I feel like it was at some point during this show.
Was that?
Lazarus, the word Lazarus. When was the last time Lazarus was getting thrown around as a word that was being used a lot?
Probably the Lazarus Planet?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I'm wondering if that is going to be like, this version of Ra's al Ghul is about, he has the Lazarus Company, and it's this big multinational. He's kind of more of a Lex Luthor type, where that's how he's trying to preserve things by controlling everything and whatnot. Because I can't see what's up.
Like, if Ra's al Ghul is going to be one of the main nemesis of Superman in this world, then I feel like Lex has to be a Batman villain then in this world.
I mean, maybe. I'm just saying with the Lazarus name, it would be weird for it to be anybody else. Just because, again, this is still a familiar world. It's not just like the Tangent universe where it's just taking names and applying them to things. But I'm more than happy to be wrong, No,
I mean, I think it makes some sense that in this universe created by Darkseid, in his image, that Ra's al Ghul has kind of succeeded in like controlling like the direction of humanity in the way he wants to, and that ultimately is personified and or materialized in a company that he is using to control all of the wealth and power, and because it really feels that this is a very oppressive company that controls a bit of everything. The fact that it's also on the Kent farm saying property of Lazarus Corp, that just kind of gives you this idea that, oh, this is like bigger than, I don't know, Apple or something. Like it's even bigger than that. It's like
so. If you guys are interested in this, if this really hit, then scratch an itch. I do recommend there's an arc from Jason Aaron's Thor called The Last Days of Midgard that does, this kind of story of old King Thor in the future trying to restart Midgard after the end of the world. And it's also in the current present day, it's telling a story about Thor going up against Dario Agger, the CEO of Roxxon Corp. And Roxxon Corp is very similar to Lazarus in this, where they're just everywhere. There's Roxxon Gas, Roxxon Media, Roxxon, and in that, at a certain point, Roxxon ends up buying the city of Oklahoma that Asgard appeared over and bans Thor from going there. So now Thor has to find these workarounds to try to help the people from being exploited by Roxxon. So there's a lot of similarities, and you can tell that, Jason Aaron's very comfortable telling this kind of story. But yeah, so if you're digging this first issue and you kind of want a little bit more early, I would definitely check out Last Days of Midgard.
Yeah. All right. What you rating Absolute Superman?
Hold on to your horses. So I'm going to give this a 9.
Okay.
I was thinking you thought I was going to go through the 10, right?
I mean, you kind of set me up for it. You made that sound like it was going.
That's a head fake.
Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking a 9 out of 10 about where I'd go as well. It's really strong in its narrative. It's got its own identity. It feels like it's setting up its own sci-fi world, as opposed to just being a typical Superman story, even though there's obviously a lot of those elements in there. But I mean, honestly, at this point, we're pretty much 3 for 3 on these Absolute books after the issue 1s. Now we'll see how they all keep up that momentum as they go forward. But having all the Trinity land in this Absolute line is not a bad thing to start with, certainly.
And I'm getting a bit over the cart here. I'm very curious to see how this Superman interacts with Wonder Woman and Batman, because they're they all seem like very loner types, and that's very smart for the Absolute universe, where Darkseid would not want the Justice League assembling at any point, right? Because they've always been a thorn in his side.
Yeah, but you know for a fact that there's probably going, if not like its own mini-series, some sort of crossover or something, like after they've all done their first arcs, I bet you were going to do this is how they all first meet story.
But I'm very excited for that kind of thing, because I want to see the dynamics there, because they are also, solitary and singular so far through one. I mean, I know it's only one issue, right? But, they seem independent of other heroes. So it's very curious to see how they would react upon with each other. But yeah, just good stuff all around with this Absolute line so far.